All right, I'm going to read this Republic article. I mean, not all of it's like inaccurate, but my problem with it is that they're using John Schaffer's likeness as their main photo for this freaking article, and it's just really pissing me off, and I just want to raise awareness. I did tag this organization, the Republic, in a post on Twitter, and I also actually emailed the author Andy East, and I'm hoping like he'll at least put a different picture as the main picture, because it really doesn't make any sense to me. You know, if they want to put John's picture on the bottom, you know, that makes some sense, but I don't really understand him being the main picture other than the fact that he's like a public figure. I'm just going to comment a little bit on this, and I'll link the article below. Hopefully we get some type of retraction, because I had some luck with the Indie Star, and they actually, you know, corrected some of the information. Local officials thinking of Capitol Police as January 6th pardons unfold. And then there's like this big picture of John Schaffer pointing an angry finger again. But under the picture it does say the Republic file photo, John Schaffer entered a plea agreement after cooperating with authorities in the aftermath of the January 6th U.S. Capitol insurrection. Local law enforcement expressed support for more than 100 injured police officers during the January 6, 2021 U.S. Capitol attack, while Columbus congressional delegation has remained silent following President Trump's decision to pardon, commute, or dismiss the cases of 1,500 plus people charged with crimes in the attack, including 3 current and former Bartholomew County residents. And just like a side note, people in Canada can't even read this article. Trump's action just hours after his return to the White House on Monday paves the way for the release from prison of people found guilty of violent attacks on police, as well as leaders of far-right extremist groups convicted of failed plots to keep the Republican in power after he lost in the 2020 presidential election to Democrat Joe Biden. Now, again, I don't understand why John's photo is the prominent photo on the top of this article. Just doesn't make any sense to me. I really think they should fix this. The pardons are a culmination of Trump's year-long campaign to rewrite the history of the January 6th attack, which left more than 100 officers injured as the angry mob of Trump supporters, some armed with poles, bats, and bear spray, overwhelmed law enforcement, shattered windows, and sent lawmakers and aides running into hiding. While pardons were expected, the speed and the scope of the clemency amounted to a stunning dismantling of the Justice Department's effort to hold participants accountable for what has been described as one of the darkest days in the country's history. Really, was it like one of the darkest days in the country's history? I don't know. I don't identify with that. I know that there are a lot darker days in our country's history. A lot of really freaking bad things have happened. 9/11, you know, Pearl Harbor. I don't know. I don't compare January 6th to these things. It just doesn't make any sense to me. Many of the January 6th rioters were convicted of committing acts of violence against police in what the U.S. Attorney's Office for the District of Columbia has described as likely the largest single-day mass assault of law enforcement officers in our nation's history. So again, you know, here we are, or at least here I am, wondering why John Schaffer's picture is the top picture on this article. This just doesn't make sense to me. It's just really obnoxious. Approximately 140 officers were assaulted January 6, 2021 at the Capitol, including about 80 from the U.S. Capitol Police and about 60 from the Metropolitan Police Department, according to the U.S. Attorney's Office for the District of Columbia. For instance, one rioter was convicted of stomping on police officers' heads, swinging poles at officers, striking an officer in the head with a metal crutch, and attacking police with pepper spray and broken pieces of furniture. Again, not John Schaffer. Another person convicted of dragging a police officer face down and head first into a crowd of rioters and then beat the face down officer at least 3 times with a flagpole. Others were convicted of ramming police with battering rams and spraying officers with pepper and bear spray. But John didn't spray anybody with pepper and bear spray or do any of these things. So again, get that picture off of here. 140 officers guarding the Capitol that day reported physical injury, but we know from talking to hundreds of officers guiding the Capitol that day that this 140 number undercounts the number of officers who were physically injured, let alone those who have suffered trauma as a result of the day's events. U.S. Attorney for the District of Columbia, Matthew Graves, said previously. Okay, well, again, John was just pretty much pointing an angry finger, and then he was in there for, a couple minutes and then left. The Columbus Police Department said Tuesday that our thoughts are with the officers who were injured during the attack. That's where our thoughts are, with all of those officers who were injured, CPD spokesman Sergeant Skylar Berry said. I mean, okay, fine. I'm cool with that. I mean, I'm not okay with the police officers getting injured. I'm not okay with any of that. I'm not okay with violence. But John Schaffer was not one of those violent attackers. Bartholomew County Sheriff Chris Lane said he did not know enough about individual cases to be able to comment at this point. I'm like everybody else. I'm just sitting back waiting to see how this all pans out because it's going to take a little time, I think, for it to sink in, Lane said. However, India Lieutenant Governor Micah Beckwith praised Trump's decision to pardon the rioters. Beckwith previously said that God told him that he sent rioters to bludgeon and assault police officers at the U.S. Capitol on January 6th. I mean, that's crazy. And again, that's not John Schaffer. Let's go. These good patriots are coming home. Thank you, Mr. President, for freeing the J6 hostages from the lawfare committed by Biden admin, Beckwith said in a Facebook post. I mean, they really did overblow some of these cases. They really shouldn't have done what they did to some of these people. Trump's order is expected to impact 3 local residents who face criminal charges stemming from the January 6th attack. And, this is again like one of those articles where they're just speculating what might happen and, in my opinion, stir up the community, make people nervous. It's just not my style. I really can't stand this kind of journalism. All right, now here's the part where we get to John. So there were several paragraphs relating to all of these unrelated things. And now John comes in to the article. And he's one of the few residents that they're naming here. Not to mention, we're 7.5 minutes into this video, and they still hadn't mentioned John Schaffer in the article. Former Columbus resident and heavy metal musician John Schaffer was sentenced in October to 3 years of probation in order to pay $1,000 in restitution for storming the U.S. Capitol on January 6, 2021. So, I mean, it was $1,200 in restitution, actually. That's a minor mistake, but still. It's a mistake nonetheless. Schaffer, who is best known as a former member of the heavy metal band Iced Earth, was photographed inside the U.S. Capitol during the attack wearing a tactical vest and a hat that said Oath Keepers Lifetime Member with bear spray in his hand, according to the court filings. So again, in the beginning of this little paragraph, they state that John Schaffer is a former member of the heavy metal band Iced Earth. He's the founder. And he is Iced Earth. It's kind of silly that they just can't get that right. There are former members of Iced Earth. John isn't one of them. In April 2021, Schaffer pleaded guilty to obstructing an official proceeding and entering and remaining in a restricted building or ground with a deadly or dangerous weapon. Last year, prosecutors and Schaffer's attorney had filed a joint notice in federal court acknowledging that he was seeking records and documents related to the certification of the 2020 presidential election, including ballot certificates when he stormed the U.S. Capitol. And, that's kind of debatable. When you sign plea agreements, the statement of facts are not always completely accurate. So we're going to have to get John's side of the story once he's finally pardoned, hopefully. Schaffer cooperated with federal authorities investigating other participants in the attack. And this is debatable too, because when the judge was talking in court, it seemed like John really didn't have any information relating to anybody that was involved with the attack that day. He wasn't on any group chats or any group phone calls. And I think that's really important. You could be a lifetime member of anything. You donate, you get a hat, you get shirts, you get all kinds kinds of things. I mean, I've done it a bunch of times, and believe me, you get free merchandise. And given the fact that he wasn't on any kind of group chats or phone calls, really does show that he acted alone. So signing a plea agreement doesn't necessarily mean that you're signing something that is factual, you know. And a lot of things, like if you look at a lot of different criminal cases, you know, cops get a lot of things wrong. Like, you know, there's people like reading their own criminal paperwork and then they're like, I didn't do that, or I didn't say that, you know. So it happens an awful lot. And, you know, like when you sign a plea agreement, you're just pleading to something that they're telling you to plead to. Doesn't necessarily mean it's the thing you did. Just saying, guys. While the court filing redacts the names of individuals Schaffer provided information on, his attorney said on October 2022 that he was cooperating with federal authorities investigating Thomas Caldwell, a retired U.S. Navy intelligence officer who was convicted in November 2022 in the U.S. Capitol attack alongside Oath Keepers founder Stuart Rhodes. Now, again, that's debatable because the judge said he was not fruitful to this investigation at all. You guys need to read the court transcripts and just check that out because this is a really important piece of information. Schaffer's attorney described the investigation into Caldwell at the time the largest conspiracy arising out of the incident, referring to the deadly insurrection at the U.S. Capitol. Caldwell was mentioned by name in Trump's order. And not for nothing, but like this really does sort of sound like a conspiracy to me. Sounds like they were trying to impose some kind of agreement by forcing John to give information about people and things that he really didn't know anything about. Maybe I'm wrong. That's just a guess. Okay, and now we have other people from this area, and like they're also like pictured below in the article. Why aren't these guys the top photos in this article? Or why not just like a generic photo of people climbing on the Capitol building or something? Like, I don't understand this. So in October, James Bemer of Hope and Donald Lee Moss of Elizabethtown pleaded guilty in one count of assaulting, resisting, or impeding an officer during the U.S. Capitol attack, according to court filings. However, the two men have yet to be sentenced. U.S. District Judge Tanya S. Chutkin had scheduled the sentencing hearing for February 13th. The offense would have carried a maximum sentence of 8 years in prison, a $250,000 fine, and up to 3 years of supervised release, according to court records. You know, I don't know these men, you know, so I don't really know what happened that day. I wasn't there. But it sounds to me that their offenses are much worse than John Schaffer's, and yet they're pictured on the bottom of this article, and they're treating John as if he's the face of January 6th, and I really dislike that. Currently, it is unclear how soon the cases will be dismissed. Which is true, because you have to think about it this way. There's like 1,500 people that they have to get paperwork out to different law enforcement agencies just so they could be pardoned. So this may take some time. I mean, I don't know how long it's going to take. Months? Weeks? It's got to be weeks at the very least. As soon as we have information to share, we will get back to everyone. U.S. Attorney's Office for the District of Columbia spokeswoman Patty Hartman told the Republic on Tuesday, I don't think we would be putting out a list of individual defendants today. And you know, maybe they just shouldn't put out a list of individual defendants. Why does everybody's name have to continue to be in the news if they're being pardoned? Needs to stop. Federal prosecutors allege that Bemer and Moss were part of a group of angry and violent rioters who descended upon and assaulted D.C. Metropolitan Police officers near the Lower West Terrace of the U.S. Capitol, who were attempting to keep them from breaching the building on January 6, 2021. Federal prosecutors also included images they claim are of the two men that were taken from officers' body cameras and third-party footage. So yeah, like, you know, like they got a money shot of John, so it just looks, you know, professional. So that's why they're using the photo. They're probably using the photo out of laziness. The complaint alleges that Moss and Bemer shoved officers' arms away from them as the group of rioters surged toward the surrounded MPD officers and began violently assaulting the officers. The complaint further alleges that Bemer struck an officer in the wrist and later attempted to pry a baton out of an officer's hand while stating, "Now I'm being soft, but I do want this pole." So again, you know, what is the reason to put John Schaffer's face as the top picture in this article, I'm not going to understand this for a long time. I'm probably never going to understand this. Moss, who at one point shouted, "This is our expletive house." So probably this is our effing house. While pointing at the Capitol, allegedly struck an officer's arm and baton and forcefully pushed another police officer from behind during the attack. The complaint states. Okay. So, I just read all of this to you guys, and there's a little blurb about John with some incorrect information and some speculative information, and for whatever reason his photo is the main photo in this article. I am glad that they did put that he was cooperating and whatever, but I still don't think that using this photo as the main picture in the article makes any sense. So what do you guys think? Do you think they should remove that photo? Because I really do. I don't really see why it needs to be the top photo. If they want to put it at the bottom and put the little explanation about John there, that's fine. But I don't really understand it being the main photo. When you Google John Schaffer's name, this is one of the first things that comes up right now, and I'm really offended. I'm going to be honest with you. I really don't understand why they have to be such jerks, just to be honest with you. Why don't you just worry about the people who are actually violent? That's my opinion. I really think that's what they should do. And that's my opinion. I'm sticking to it. I love you guys. See you soon. If anything, this article taught me that you can do a bunch of crazy shit and be a mere footnote in an article, and you can be a person who doesn't attack people and a person who doesn't cause any destruction, and you'll be the front page news. I really, really am very offended by this.